right, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. It's a big day here in Norfolk, and I'm happy you all can join us. Today's announcement is going to conclude a process to find Norfolk's next chief of police. But before we get into that announcement, I do want to take this opportunity to thank the gentleman sitting here to my left. I want to thank Mike Goldsmith for his leadership over the last 12 months. Mike, I can never express my gratitude for your service. There's just no words. Not just this past year, but over your entire career here in Norfolk. With your announcement of your retirement, just know we're all going to miss you. We thank you for everything you've done, and I wish you the best on your next journey.
Thank you so much.
And we'll celebrate you a little bit more as the time goes. But now moving on to the reason we're here today. Last fall, we set out with our search firm, Morrison McDaniel, to identify the individual that would become the next chief of police for the city of Norfolk. Through this process, we identified several highly qualified candidates, and I want to thank all of those individuals that applied for expressing their interest in our position. After a long review process, I'm happy to announce that Mark Talbot has agreed to serve as the next chief of police here in Norfolk. Chief Talbot's a well-respected, seasoned law enforcement professional with 35 years in the policing industry. He's a planner, he's a strategist, and I'm happy to say he's very cerebral and quite an intellectual. He holds a bachelor's degree from Penn State. He has additional education from the Police Executive Development Institute at Penn State and the Criminal Justice Leadership Institute at the University of Delaware. Ultimately, a chief in today's day and age must effectively straddle being responsive to the community, but also responsive to the men and women that serve in that chief's department. And I believe Chief Talbot has a strong track record when it comes to this balance. It's clear to me that Chief Talbot possesses all the traits that I am looking for in a new chief, and also all of the traits that the residents have been asking for as I searched for a new chief. So I believe we found the right individual to lead the Norfolk Police Department. And with that, I'm happy to introduce to you all the next chief in the city of Norfolk, Mark Talbot.
Good afternoon. This is an honor, and I couldn't be happier to be here. It is a very surprising turn in my career, frankly. It is exciting, and it's the right move for me at this point. I believe it's the right decision for the city of Norfolk. I've spent more than 3 decades studying crime and disorder and justice and fairness and injustice and marginalization and poverty. And I've dedicated my life to understanding those things and using them to help develop the right strategies to make cities safer. I believe that I can continue to help build on what is already a great organization. I believe in the capacity of great policing, and I believe in the responsibility that it forces upon us when we're doing the job. I'm leaving the city of Hampton much sooner than I anticipated, but I'm leaving with a clear conscience because I'm walking away from an organization that is strong. It is better than it was when I found it. It is fully capable of tackling the challenges that are in front of it, and it will continue to do so moving into the future. There are many things that I'm proud of in my career, and I'd like to just talk about a couple of them. I'm walking away from an organization that reduced murders in 2022 at the end of our first full year with our policing strategy by 30%. We reduced non-fatal shootings at the end of that period by 25%. We implemented a data-driven policing strategy that was instrumental in making sure that we were focused on the right people, the right places, and the right situations. There in the city of Hampton is a geographic-based approach to engaging with the people in that city that need us the most, folks that need resources, some folks there who need handcuffs and removed from the city. We've made several changes to the way policing works in the culture, and many of those things I'm looking forward to introducing to this great police department. I'm proud that I'm able to walk away from the city of Hampton having reduced victimization and suffering. And I'd like to say to everybody who has overwhelmingly supported me from the city of Hampton, from the top of city government to the brand new patrol officers that I've spoken to, and the number of residents and business owners and other stakeholders in that city who have just been so gracious in telling me how much they appreciated the work that I've done in collaboration with the men and women from the Hampton Police Division. I want to thank you all, and I want to thank the men and women specifically of the Hampton Police Division for providing the work that people are overwhelmingly supporting me for at this point. That praise belongs to them, and I hope that they get it. I will close with a message to the members of the Norfolk Police Department. We are going to work together, shoulder to shoulder, to make this city as safe as it can possibly be. We're going to have a good time doing it. We're going to move as fast as we possibly can to make people safe. We're going to do it in a just and fair way. We're going to find the people that are victimizing others, and we're frankly going to remove them from this city until they're ready to live peacefully amongst the rest of us. And we're going to live up to the expectations of every member of this city, like we do the vast majority of the time. In closing, thank you, Dr. Filer, for this opportunity. I'd like to thank the Honorable Mayor of this city and members of council, and assure you that I will not let you down. Thank you.
You guys have questions?
Yes. First of all, Chief Talbot, congratulations on the new job. Dr. Filer, I have a question for you, sir. I know last time when we had talked with you about the search last month, you had talked about there being 3 finalists, there being a search committee in which Chief Talbot served on. So my question is for 2 parts, just if you can maybe explain the roadmap as to how we got here today. One, was Chief Talbot one of the 3 finalists for the job? And if you can explain kind of the connection of where we went from that to how we got to today with Chief Talbot becoming the next Norfolk chief.
I suspected that would probably be the first question. It was certainly not the path we were on. Chief Talbot was not one of the 3 finalists. He was not. I think that the easiest way to explain how we're here today with Chief Talbot sitting beside me is we moved through the process. We narrowed the candidacy pool down to 5, and then we narrowed it further down to 3. And we did sets of interviews, face-to-face interviews with all of those candidates. Chief Talbot was a part of that search committee. Interim Chief Goldsmith was on the committee. Deputy City Manager Alan Archer, myself, and our HR Director Marta Smith. As we concluded those face-to-face interviews, we then rounded back as a search committee and had conversations about the candidates and their qualifications. And I want to be very clear, what's happening here today is in no manner any demotion or any demerits against the candidates that we had. This was ultimately a decision that I made. After having all 3 of the finalists in front of us, didn't know frankly, if the right person was in that pool. And so I had reached out to Morrison McDaniel, our search firm, and had a conversation about extending the search and perhaps throwing in more individuals in the applicant pool. We had conversations about that over a couple days. At that point, Interim Chief Goldsmith and I had a conversation about our path forward, and I was pretty honest with Interim Chief Goldsmith at that time that, just the interactions that I had with Chief Talbot, the questions that he was asking, the conversations that we were having after the candidates, I just said, geez, I think Chief Talbot would be a pretty darn good chief here in Norfolk. I think Interim Chief Goldsmith agreed, but neither of us obviously knew if that was an option. At that point, I called Chief Talbot and kind of told him where my head was and what I was thinking, and asked if he would be willing to be an applicant for the position, at which point he did put in his application and went through the assessment process with Morrison McDaniel.
And when was the time, can you give like the day or the time frame as compared to when the city came out yesterday and said that Chief Talbot will be introduced? Like, when did this all start? When you approached him to be a candidate?
So we finished face-to-face interviews, and I would estimate it was about 4 or 5 days after that when I reached out initially to Chief Talbot and told him kind of what I was thinking, and that I was not sure that my next chief was in the pool, and asked him what his intentions might be, or if this would be a position he might be interested in.
Was this like a week ago, or?
Oh no, we finished the interviews with the candidates, the finalist candidates, probably about 2.5 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Gotcha.
So I felt that it was not appropriate to simply reach out to Chief Talbot and then say, no, that's my guy. I mean, so really we ran this process through Morrison McDaniel, through our search firm. So Chief Talbot he applied to the Morrison McDaniel. Morrison McDaniel put Chief Talbot through the same assessments that all the other candidates were put through, did the same background checks, did all of that. And then once that process was done, I then interviewed Chief Talbot.
Did the resident input that you set up that you all set up, did that have any influence into the decision to possibly open up the search again or to go to Chief Talbot as
No, so the influence from the resident survey and from the town halls that we had a massive influence, right? So our residents told us they wanted somebody that had experience as a chief. They wanted someone with experience in an urban setting. They wanted someone very involved in community policing, strong emphasis on data-driven police work. Those traits, those things that were said, absolutely sort of guided me towards Chief Talbot, because I believe he epitomizes all of those characteristics. We did, the residents responded to the candidates, the 3 candidates that were in front of them. I think it's safe to say, in fact, I know it's safe to say, because I looked at all the responses, there was no consensus in that, but there was also there were no community comments that said, oh my gosh, you can't have any of these folks.
Sure. Chief Talbot, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to speak on about when Dr. Filer approached you, just kind of what was going through your mind. You were on the search committee looking for candidates, and then all of a sudden you were approached with this opportunity. Just if you could take us back, if you like, just what was going through your mind when that day happened, that moment happened?
Well, in my career and just generally speaking, as a police chief, you seek out cities. They don't seek you out. And when Dr. Filer called me and spoke to me about the possibility of coming to this great city, the only thing that a police chief does is say, that would be an honor. I don't think you say anything different if you're a sane person. And so here I sit. The process of assessing the candidates is something that I've done many times in my career. I've never ended up in the job that I was assessing candidates for, because it typically doesn't work like that. Norfolk wasn't on my mind as a city to work in, but nobody had asked me, frankly. Hampton has been tremendous to me, as you can see by the comments that are being made. It has been the best time of my career, and it in some ways I'm experiencing a lot of angst about walking away from a great bunch of men and women. But as I said, this opportunity, this city, what I've done in my career, what I understand, my skill set, this is the job that I should be doing. This is the job that I should be doing, and I'm honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to getting started, and I'm looking forward to demonstrating why I am the right person for this opportunity.
Expressed a lot of love for Hampton, which was kind of where I was going next. I mean, some city officials in Hampton we talked to yesterday, they seemed surprised, but is this something that you guys were ready to more so announce now and maybe not yesterday, and just kind of this is how it all came together?
I've heard, I am surprised as well. You know, I'm surprised as well. If you would have asked me 30 days ago where you're going to be, it would not be here. So I stand with them, surprised, and right now mixed feelings because I'm still the Hampton Chief of Police, but I'm also convinced that this happened for a reason, and Dr. Filer and I had never spoken prior to sitting down together to assess these candidates, but I was deeply impressed with Chief Goldsmith, deeply impressed with Dr. Filer, and the process itself. I was impressed with many of the things that I heard from the candidates. And at some point, I realized I could do the work that they needed to get done. So here I am.
Now, Hampton has a real-time crime center. I know there's been talks of having one in Norfolk. Can you just talk about the impact the real-time crime center has had on crime in Hampton?
Yes. So the potential impact of the real-time crime center can be realized when you have a strategy in place that can utilize the technology, right? Ultimately, every police department has more video, has more evidence than they're capable of using, and the key is always to develop a strategic approach that allows you to incorporate that technology and accelerate the strategy that's in place. So that's what we will do here. How it's been working for us in the city of Hampton is when you are positioned in the right neighborhoods and you're focused on the right people, and now you're able to leverage the technology to enhance your understanding of both the neighborhoods, the people there, the movement of cars and people and situations, and you take all of that and it'll allow you to do more than you could do otherwise.
I do want to also ask you, Chief Talbot, because you mentioned about getting this opportunity to be with the City of Norfolk. When Dr. Filer was speaking with you in the candidacy process, what was it about the City Norfolk Police Department that maybe drew you to it to say, this is something I need to look at and pursue?
That never occurred to me as something that I need to look at and pursue. As Chief Filer said, thinking about these things is what I've done almost constantly for 3 decades. You know, while you're watching the football game, I'm thinking about urban issues. So listening to the challenges in the city of Norfolk and considering what the city is looking for, and watching the news coverage, frankly, and seeing the citizens and the business owners who say they want somebody out in this city who understands how to make a neighborhood safer, and understands how to do it without victimizing folk who don't deserve to be victimized, and do it in a fair and legitimate way, and develop trust, and find a pathway to the right resources in those neighborhoods. As I paid attention to those things, and then couple that with the phone call from Dr. Filer, it's what I wanted to do, and started to develop a passion to bring the things that I've learned here with this organization.
And there's been some residents of Norfolk we've talked with that are excited about you being announced as the next chief. They've also been vocal about what they'd like to see you tackle within your first 100 days. Community outreach has been a big topic that residents that we've talked with in the last 24 hours have said. I understand, not asking specifically about specific policies, under your department, but in your first 100 days, is there a top line issue, or maybe one of the top line issues that you'd like to tackle in that time in the new job?
Sure. A city can't thrive if it's not safe. And the first thing that we need to make sure that we're focusing on is, where are people suffering the most? Where is there a level of violence that we need to quickly put an end to? Urban America in throughout the country is suffering in many neighborhoods, and it turns out to be not even neighborhoods. It turns out to be the north end of the block, or the south end of the block, or this house, or this drug market over here. We need to make sure we're putting the right resources into those challenges, and we've got to do it as quickly as possible, as consistently as possible, and we need to make sure that as we do that work, we're developing a clear sense of exactly what steps do we need to take to turn those locations around. The second thing I will say is that it's important that I listen and learn to the people who are interested in producing public safety with us. I want to hear from everybody who wants to talk to me about safety in the city of Norfolk. And I want to make sure that everybody who wants that opportunity to express themselves gets it. And I also want to make sure that I'm talking to people who don't think that they should be able to speak to the police chief. Because what I care most deeply about are not the people who can, like Dr. Filer, frankly, who can command my time and attention anytime he wants. I care most deeply about the people who have no authority to bring me to their neighborhood, or to see me knocking on their door. Those are the people that I think are most important for me to be in touch with and to hear from. And the third thing is, I am excited to partner with the Norfolk Police Department. I believe in cops, and I believe in their ability to turn cities around, and I know that they are just waiting to hear what it is I care about, and I have every bit of experience and confidence that when I'm clear about that, they're going to deliver it. So I think broadly, those are the three things that you will see.
Obviously, Chief Goldsmith's gone April 14th. Do you expect this passing of the roles to happen soon, or what were you guys shooting for?
Yeah, I think we're still trying to iron out some details for when Chief Talbot may transition out of his current role and over here. Currently, we don't have an exact timetable set. We know that right now we're shooting to have the chief on board by May 1st, but I think it's fair to say technically I would say to the residents and to our men and women here in the Norfolk Police Department, you'll probably start seeing Chief Talbot around next week as we start to transition a little bit. And Mike, Interim Chief Goldsmith, you get to wear that for a little bit longer. Interim Chief Goldsmith is also, though he is going to retire, is not just leaving the city, so he will be around helping with this transition as well. So I think for lack of more concrete dates at this point, I think it's safe to say that on May 1st, Chief Talbot will be ready to hit the ground running if he hasn't already sort of been transitioned.
Chief Talbot, Hampton's just across the water. Hampton and Norfolk are pretty similar demographically, economically, infrastructurally, except that Norfolk is basically twice the size in a lot of respects. Do you see coming to Norfolk as your approach going to be just to scale up what you were doing in Hampton, or are there things that are distinct or different challenges in Norfolk that you have already seen, given that you're right across the water?
Beautiful question. Policing is enormously complex. And so there are a number of things that are going to be different in Norfolk because it's Norfolk. And I'm going to have to learn about those things and learn how the nuances of this city are going to impact the approach. And the complexity is related to the culture and it's related to the history and who the last police chief was and before that and before that. And cities are also the same, right? In terms of the type of conditions that generate crime and suffering are the same in every city. So the complexity is there and it's always there, and you have to figure out how that's going to impact you strategically and tactically, and what it means for your deployment strategies and the kinds of community policing events that are important in which neighborhoods. And there is a deep evidence base of strategies and tactics that work everywhere. And it's important to recognize when you simply have maybe a larger version of the same type of challenge and you're able to match the evidence-based approach to this scenario or challenge and make good choices about what is going to deliver the level of safety and quality of life that you are aiming to meet. So it's this sort of dichotomy where every city is different. There's no question about it. Size does make a difference. The scale and scope of problems will impact what we do, but it doesn't turn this into some strange land for me. It's going to be great.
Will you be moving to Norfolk?
Of course.
Chief Talbot, Norfolk's down some 200 officers. Obviously, we're just hearing you're announced. But any preliminary plans for the shortages? Would you maybe take any Hampton command staff with you? I don't know if that's an option, but any preliminary thoughts on that? Obviously, this is a nationwide issue, but.
Sure. I mean, generally, staffing is something that it's important to look at like you look at the rest of the business. What does our recruiting and retention machine look like here in the city of Norfolk? If we want to hire 50 new police officers by the end of the year, how many academy classes do we need to have? How many recruiting events do we need to hold? What is our effective yield from each one of these events? What social media outlets are we able to leverage into additional candidates? Where are the locations in the city where we under-marketed ourselves, right? I think that you look at recruiting and retention in as precise a fashion as you look at crime and quality of life and how you're policing neighborhoods. You have to grab a hold of the thing, see how it's working, see where there's holes in it. Is it at the top of the funnel? Are we getting enough candidates at the top? Are we kicking too many of them out? Is it smoking marijuana? Is it, what are the factors that are causing us to drop people. I think once you start to look at the machine and how it's functioning, you start to develop a sense of what intervention is going to make the most sense for it.
Dr. Feiler, I know that you and I have had many conversations about this search over the last year. Now that it's come to a conclusion, when you reflect back on this nearly year-long search, everything that's went into it and how it manifested, how do you look back on this as a city manager?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that last night a little bit as I was reflecting, and clearly this isn't where I thought we were going, right? I think the one thing I will say throughout this process, and it has weighed very heavily on me, and I thank Interim Chief Goldsmith. I actually had a great conversation a few nights ago with Sheriff Barron, and I want to thank him for his comments that he gave to help me a little bit. I think ultimately, I had to know, I just had to feel like we had picked the right individual to not only reach out to the community and be effective in the community, but I needed someone that ultimately was a department head and could effectively manage the day-to-day operations of nearly 700 individuals in a department. And while if I'm gonna Monday morning quarterback it, and if I had perfect foresight, I would have said, Chief Talbot, would you be interested in putting your name in and things like that, and that would have started months ago. I'm gonna sleep very well tonight knowing that the right individual is going to be the next chief of police in Norfolk. It may not have gone down the way we thought it was gonna go, but I know we made the right decision.
What was Hampton City Manager's reaction to the news?
I don't know. I know if I was in that position, I would wonder, why. I would be asking that question. But I think as Chief Talbot has mentioned, it was about an opportunity. I was very happy providing that opportunity because I think Chief Talbot is the right person for this job, and I want to thank him for even entertaining the idea. Right? I mean, the phone call I was making to him to gauge his interest, I did not know how that phone call would go. And I was prepared either way for however that phone call went. But I know it's hard to lose good people, and I've been on the other end of that.
Worried about how this will affect your relationship with counterparts in Hampton and the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission?
I can't imagine that it would influence those relationships at all. Right? I have lost individuals to other localities here in Hampton Roads, and I think I've tried to still be extremely collegial with all of my counterparts and colleagues.
One or two more, you guys.
Obviously the search cost $35,000 with the consulting firm. What do you think of the use of that money? Is there any left? But I don't think you would have gone any other way. You were going to start with a consulting firm.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be clear on that. So what Morrison McDaniel provided for us was more than just giving us a list of candidates, right? I mean, the reason we selected Morrison McDaniel from that RFP process is because they have a proprietary assessment program that they use for executive candidates for these things. And I do not regret bringing Morrison McDaniel on. In fact, Chief Talbot himself went through that assessment process, as did all the other candidates. And really, that is a process I do not have the skills and capability to do. Interim Chief Goldsmith doesn't have, even though he's been through those processes, he doesn't have that. So I do not regret bringing Morrison McDaniel on. It still proved important. And in fact, they still had a very important role to play at the end here, because when Chief Talbot became an actual applicant and candidate, he went through all the same process that everybody else went through, albeit maybe 2 months later than the others, but they were still instrumental in giving me the confidence and the assurance that I was making a good decision.
Last one, we got any more?
I was just going to say, following up too, going to selecting the candidate that was on a search committee for a police chief search, is Dr. Feiler, is Is that an uncommon, or does that happen in a lot of municipalities for different searches from your experience, or if Chief Talbot, if maybe from your experience in law enforcement, or Air Chief Goldsmith, you wanted to weigh in on that? Is that a common practice? Has happened before, or?
I can't really speak to that, and definitely not in the law enforcement world. I mean, I think in the world of, in the world in DC, I know that this has happened, where you have folks on a vetting committee that end up being the Secretary of Transportation or something as their vetting candidates to be that. In this situation, I felt like, I clearly wanted to tie off the process that we had gone through, and that's why, rather than even entertain something like this or approach Chief Talbot, it was 5 days after all of the interviews had concluded before I had reached out to Chief Talbot, and that was because I wanted to be sure that, I just didn't feel it, right, that I didn't think that I had in the candidate pool the person that was going to be the next chief. And then, as I mentioned that to Interim Chief Goldsmith. We talked about it for a couple days, and then ultimately made the decision to reach out. So I don't know if it's common. I have seen it happen, but yeah.
You had one more if you wanted to take the last one.
Well, we found out who the candidates A, B, and C were, and then we got to see answers from those candidates to certain questions. Have you answered the same questions, and could we see those answers?
So we will not be releasing any of the names of the candidates that were in the pool. I was going to be respectful of that. I had that request. We did have individuals in there that were assistant chiefs and deputy chiefs and sitting chiefs, and so I think out of respect for those individuals, particularly now that they are likely to remain where they are, I'm not going to release any of those names. As far as the answers to the questions, yes, Chief Talbot did have that verbal interview with Morris McDaniel. Not sure we have it written, but I can check with Morris McDaniel as if to whether or not we might have a transcript from that interview. But in my interview, the very first questions I asked Chief Talbot were those 4 questions. But that was all verbal. They were not written at that point.